everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here. And actually, when I was on Maui, I was a proud Rotarian for 11 years with the Kapalui Rotary Club, so very familiar with the wonderful work that you all do. So it is an absolute honor to be here. All right, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the Humane Society. I'm assuming many of you are already familiar with the organization, been in the community a very long time. So this is kind of sort of a snapshot of past, present, and future. And we have certainly been undergoing a lot of transition over the past year. So, that works. It all started with a bear cup. So the history of our organization is always interesting to me. I find history interesting anyways. We started because of this bear cup, and back in the late 1880s, there was an intoxicated logger that brought a small bear cub into town at the corner of 8th and Pacific, and he was kicking it to get it to perform for the small crowd that had gathered around. And the crowd tried to get him to stop, but he refused, so someone ran and found the justice of the peace. Eventually, he was arrested and sentenced to 19 days of hard labor. So after that happened, there were several Tacoma citizens that got together and decided, let's form this organization to look out for animals. And so we were incorporated in 1888, and that makes us the 4th oldest humane society in the nation. So we've been around a very, very long time. We were initially focused on the welfare of horses and working animals because that was sort of the times. But a lot of people don't realize that we also cared for orphan children and unwed mothers. And that was the case often for humane societies back in the late 1800s. The most interesting story of this is with the ASPCA, which is the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And their leader, Henry Berg, was very famous. He basically founded the first animal welfare organization in New York for the nation. And there's a very famous story of this little girl named Mary Ellen Wilson. And she had parents. She lived on the streets with her parents in New York, but she was being treated horribly. Who knows what abuses she was suffering. There's a picture of her, just all beaten up and clothes are torn. But nobody would do anything for her because she had parents and she was considered property of her parents. So they came to Henry because they knew that he had spoken up for the animals. And so hence the whole term Humane Society, and really before there were social services specifically for orphan children and unwed mothers, they all kind of fell under the umbrella of Humane Society. So little known history that, and interestingly, some of those trends continue today in that we often have legislation for animals that pave the way for legislation for people, amazingly, because we see the need to help animals because they can't help themselves, and then we sort of, as an afterthought, go, oh, yeah, maybe we should have that for people as well. So, interesting stuff. But that's not why I'm here. So, continuing on with Tacoma Humane Society. So, in the 1900s, we started seeing machines taking over for horses and that sort of thing. So, our work naturally started to change to become more about pet animals, companion animals. There's a couple of interesting animals in these pictures. Frisky, there's Frisky. Frisky was named Heroine Dog in 1938 because she saved her little owner up there from drowning. So that's Frisky. And then this down here, this is Big John. And Big John is a retired fire wagon horse, and the Humane Society saved him from the boot factory in 1922. So that was a big story for us as well. Okay, so now we're moving on to the 1950s, and this is when we really started to start the work that we're this was our first director up here, Archie Fiddler, yes, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, Fiddler. We took over the animal control contract, and in 1954, we built this shelter annex that was able to house 30 dogs, had a puppy room, office, meeting room, and we were taking in about 1,200 animals at that time. However, in 3 years after taking over animal control, we had grown to almost 14,000 animals. So we were starting to grow really rapidly. Okay, by the end of the 1960s, we were handling a lot more and more animals and euthanizing a lot of those animals just because of space. I mean, at some point you have more animals than you can find homes for. And having been in animal welfare for 30 years as I have, I started back in what we call the dark days and have seen the changes over the past few decades, which we'll get to in a minute. But I will tell you that by 1971, your local Humane Society was taking in 58,287 animals a year. Yes, right? More than 75% of those were euthanized. So over 44,000 animals euthanized every year because just no space, right? People didn't know about this. And I entered sheltering at the end of the 70s. I was 3, too. And I came in at the tail end of this, just these incredible numbers, and nobody knew what was happening. We were just, we literally, you've heard the stories, right? 20, 48 hours, you're straight hold and time's up. Many animals didn't even make it to an adoption floor. They didn't have a chance because we were just dealing with so many of them. But we weren't talking about it. So what happened is in the early 80s, we started talking about it. And I was, as mentioned, I was at the BCSPCA at the time in Vancouver, right across the border. And I remember somebody going on the local news in Seattle. And I distinctly remember this. They came on in the morning and they had a basket of, I can't remember if it was kittens or puppies. And they talked about how maybe 2 of those would survive. And I was working the phones that day and I get chicken skin, even thinking about it. Chicken skin, that's a Hawaiian term. It means goosebumps. But I do, because I remember the phone calls that we got. Because, of course, we got the news from Seattle locally as well. And people were just horrified. And it was...
Stay with the microphone, if you would.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, thank you. People were just horrified. I'm a bit of a walker. So anyways, this is Bill Barnett. He is a local humane officer, and he was the one doing it locally here, going and talking about those stories. It worked, just opening people's eyes and letting them know that it was a problem. We started seeing numbers coming down. So now we're going into the 1990s. And I don't have any pictures from the 90s, so we just have some cute 90s memes there for y'all to look at. The Humane Society Board of Directors decided we've got to start addressing this overpopulation situation. So put in some specific steps that included a Cinderella program that's still in place today to provide financial assistance for spay-neuter. License differential, meaning if your pet was spayed or neutered, you could purchase a license for cheaper than if your pet was still intact. We hired a dedicated part-time education outreach person to go out and continue to spread the importance of responsible pet ownership. And we passed some legislation including mandatory spay-neuter on the second impound, ban on selling or giving away pets in public places, and licenses required for juvenile animals, all aimed at controlling the pet population. Okay, the other thing that happened in the 1990s was the Sorry, I did that with my paper, I think. The other thing that happened in the 1990s was the no-kill movement. You all familiar with that? All familiar with the term no-kill? Sounds great. Everybody wants to sign on. Nobody wants to kill. What's the problem with that, right? So I'd like to say that no-kill makes a better bumper sticker than it does a strategy. Here's the problem with no-kill. Sorry, I was about to wander again. Here's the positive things about no-kill. Let's start with that, because there were some definite positive things. The philosophy and the intent behind it was great. And it really did force us to look at ourselves, because we were very much, when the public started saying, whoa, what's going on, we were very much, well, it's your fault. It's your fault, public. You're the one breeding the animals and being responsible and surrendering them to us. We're just cleaning up your dirty work. And we were very much like that. So this movement did force us to look at ourselves and realize that there are things that we could do as the sheltering industry to solve this problem. But the negatives was that it took a group of people that should have been working together on a problem and it split them into no-kill and the very unfortunate people that ended up being killed. The public doesn't understand it, because the fact of the matter is you can be no-kill and still euthanize animals, because there are times when euthanasia, anybody here had to euthanize an old pet or a sick pet, there are times when euthanasia is the humane thing to do. So people don't really understand the whole thing behind it. And so they stopped supporting shelters. If you euthanize animals, we're not going to support you. Oh, you're a kill shelter. And those were probably the very shelters that needed the support most, quite honestly. It's not a matter of wanting. I've worked with these people now for decades. I've worked and been in different parts of the country, and I can tell you it is extremely rare to find a shelter worker that doesn't have a passion for pets. So it's really about a lack of resources. And when you have 52,000 animals coming into a shelter that can support a couple of hundred animals at a time, you have a problem. Okay. So the other problem it started becoming about the numbers. So in this attempt to satisfy the donor that wanted organizations to be no-kill, people got mission drift, and were more focused on the numbers than the welfare of animals. And in extreme cases, they were manipulating numbers, and in other cases, as I say, it was just a shift in terms of what's the best thing for this animal versus what are my numbers going to look like. Okay. So, moving on. This is 1999. The shelter that we are currently in and have outgrown is right on Center Street. And this was made possible by an incredible gift from Bill and Meryl Gazecki, and we're very grateful to them still. We have 30,000 square feet. We have space now for about 300 animals at full capacity, bathing, grooming area, a full veterinary clinic, adoption counseling area, and a small retail store. Okay, and in 2000, we began microchipping all the pets. This effort continues, and that has been a great help in reuniting, I should say, lost pets and their owners. Okay, we also, since 2002, have descriptions and photos of all the pets at our shelter on our website. And all of these things helped. So by 2002, we had seen a 48% decline in those euthanasia numbers, and 68% specifically for dogs and puppies. Cats were still a problem. Okay. Puppy euthanasia alone dropped 86%. So we were really making headway for the dogs. All right, 2004. That's the year that we decided to give the animal control contracts back to the city. So previously we had employed the officers and operated animal control as one seamless organization. We felt that we could use those resources better to focus on sheltering, and so we took over as a sheltering-only contract that's in place today. say we have contracts with 7 different jurisdictions to provide sheltering for animals of those jurisdictions, but we do not employ the officers. Okay. All right. So that is your comedic break. And what we're going to move on to is the future. And the future is the present and the future. And so dark days behind us. We really, now we boast a 92.7% live release rate, which is a much more positive way of saying we're not euthanizing many animals at all. And I can tell you when we are euthanizing, it is for extreme medical, so we cannot alleviate the suffering or fix a problem to have them go on and have a healthy life, or extreme behavioral. Typically, a typical instance of this is a very aggressive dog with a significant life history. Okay. So what are we doing differently? Well, we have this community cat program. So remember I said that cats were a problem? We had gotten on top of the dog situation, but cats remained a problem. Big part of it are these free-rolling cats is really the most appropriate term, because they are made up of maybe some ferals. Ferals are a lot more rare. That word is frankly overused. More likely unsocialized. Could be neighbor's pet, could be own pets though out there as well. How do you know when a cat is wandering around in your neighborhood whether it is one of those 3? You don't know. We don't even know half the time when it comes into the shelter, because cats, being cats, are not always happy to have taken a car ride to the shelter and often present as being feral when really they're just pissed off. But this was a huge problem for us, because when you come to adopt a cat at the Humane Society, you're looking for a pet cat. And so these guys, we had a lot of cats that were never going to get homes. What do we do with those cats? Well, we believe those cats are doing fine outside. When they are creating a nuisance, we have very educated staff that can go out and try to mitigate those circumstances and come up with suggestions to alleviate the nuisance. But which most of the time, most of them are prevented just by spaying and neutering, which is the first thing we want to do with these guys, put them back into the community if they're already thriving out there, and let them live out their life. That has helped us decrease euthanasia significantly for cats. So that's one of the ways we work. We also have a transport program. This program is about collective responsibility. So we work now with shelters in the state and out of the state, so that when we're full, we can, and they have space, we can send some animals their way, and when they're full and we have space, they can send some animals our way. And this is really big. There's a huge transport network between the south and the northeast, because the northeast shelters are literally, they're so far ahead of the game, they're like, they don't have animals. And the south are still seeing 52,000 type populations in some of their shelters. So there's a big pipeline going northeast, and that's made a dramatic difference in animal sheltering world. Neonatal fosters, this is another, you wouldn't know that's neonatal fosters. I'm just figuring you guys are probably tired of looking at dark pages, so, but this is our neonatal foster program, which is the other big thing that's helped us decrease the euthanasia of cats, because we see, especially at this time of year, starting somewhere around, this year was April, but typically, May till September, it's kitten season, and we see great numbers of kittens, and many of them are orphaned and very young, or orphaned and neonatal even, so they're just newborns. And so having a foster program to support them until they're old enough to be adopted has, again, made a dramatic difference in our numbers. Medical care for sick and injured animals. This is more and more important. What we're starting to see is that our population, we're a victim of our own success. How's my time? Okay. We're a victim of our own success in that now we're seeing not the puppies and the very adoptable animals. We're starting to see more and more of the older medical cases, and that's why people are relinquishing. Behavior is another, where we get a lot of solved so that we can readopt them and get them into homes. Customer service is a big deal for us, so really wanting to work with people, and how can we help them, and how can we keep pets in the home. So we're starting to see animals that are coming to us because of medical and behavioral reasons. What that's telling us is that there's a need there. People can't handle these big medical, might be financial, behavioral might just be they don't know how to deal with it. So how can we get in and support them and prevent those animals from coming in to the shelter? People need to trust us, and we need to have that reputation out there. So customer service is really important. All right, so where are we going? The sky's the limit. We really want to be like the Northeast, so we can start helping some of these other communities and be transporting in. Our numbers come down all the time, thanks to supporters like you, whether you're supporting through your dollars, through your time, through your advocacy, through adopting. All of those things help us. Through inviting us here today to speak. It's all wonderful, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much.